could find such a love at our age. Whoever thought we could dance on a thrilling...
Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words. I'm your co-host, Judy Alexander, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Hello, Judy. Hello, viewers and listeners. What's today's topic?
Can a couple survive political differences?
Yes, indeed. So, before we get into that topic, I want to put in a plug, especially, I think I mentioned in our last, one of our last episodes, that we've redone the website for ctn7.com.
Yes.
So I want to invite people, it's completely redone. Go check it out. Tell us what you think. That's a way, of course, you can contact us and all that kind of stuff. So do check that out. I've also completely redone my own website, brucechalmer.com, and just in the past couple of days, I have added a couple of short videos to that website. I have one on the home page, and I have one on the page for couple sessions. No, I went in a couple sessions page. Yeah, one on the home page, one couple sessions. I think that's what it is. Or no, one on the course page. Whatever. Check it out, folks. I've got some videos on there, damn it. I don't remember where I put them. But they're good.
They're someplace there, and they're very good.
They are good. What they tell you is, first of all, what to expect from me if you want to do couple sessions with me. And I sort of lay out that stuff. And then on the one that's talking about the course, the Passion Paradox course, I talk a lot about why I bothered doing that course and why you would perhaps benefit from it. And especially if you're considering doing therapy, especially with me, but anybody really, if you do that course, you will find you are much better positioned to get, I think, to do a much more efficient job of solving your problems.
Right, and I think it's very helpful because a lot of times people don't know what to expect from a therapist. You know, if the only thing you've gotten is from TV, boy, I'd say,
And I know you know this, folks. It's amazing. Among the many reasons why I am so blessed to be, with this particular wife of mine, is that she puts up with, when we're sitting there and we're watching a show where there's a therapist, and she puts up with my horror. I'm sitting there saying, I would never say something like that. It's just sort of
it's
funny.
like, no wonder people don't want to go to therapy if those therapists are all like that. My God, no. But from what you have said and from your videos, you don't work that way.
No, I do not work that way.
How does that make you feel? It's like, I want to...
I know, and it's funny because that is a stock and trade comment, and I virtually never say that. I heard myself saying something almost like that once, but it was in a very, very specific context.
Yeah.
And I just don't generally work that way. I'm much more interested when I'm working with people in following meaning, and meaning is never about how does that make you feel.
Right.
Meaning is much more nuanced than that. There's a lot more interesting stuff. It's richer than that. And that our conversations often tend to be actually pretty funny. In the midst of people's a lot of pain, we often laugh in sessions because there is this appreciation of the absurdity of life sometimes that I think really helps in getting through very hard stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, do check that stuff out.
Do check it out.
So let's talk about this topic.
Let's talk about this topic. Can a couple survive political differences?
Well, what do you think? Yes or no?
Well, I would say, were I in a couple where we had major political differences, I'm not sure I could survive that.
Yeah,
I don't know. Well, you probably have dealt with it because you're the therapist. I'm just like the schlub over here.
You are not a schlub.
Thank you.
Let me be clear about that. No, I have indeed dealt with it in couples I've worked with.
Yeah, and so tell me what happens.
So let me put this in a little bit of context.
Okay.
So back in the day, says the old guy over here, right? Back in the day, this was far less of an issue than it has become in the last, 10 years or so, roughly. And a lot of people would sort of date it to when Trump did his first campaign back in 2016, although the seeds of it were there for a long time before that as well. But it did not used to be that big a deal. And I've told this story before, maybe even on this podcast, I don't remember. I am old enough to remember the 1960 presidential election. I was 9 years old.
My God.
Yes, well, let's just say you wouldn't remember it, although
I wouldn't remember it.
You
Yes,
were around.
I was around, but I could not remember
I was
that.
9 years old,
Yes.
so I do remember it. And I remember finding out that day, I think it was that evening of Election Day, that my mother said she voted for Kennedy and my father said he voted for Nixon. And there was no rancor involved in that. They laughed and said, oh, we sort of canceled each other's vote out. It just wasn't a big deal. And it's not that there wasn't a lot of intense feeling, between people, adherents of both sides, but there was something about it that just felt like, of course we have some differences. The difference they had was, this is going to sound silly, right? The difference they had was in their opinion as to who would be the better president. That was the difference.
Right.
Nowadays, that is not the difference, that your opinion of whether, do you like Trump or do you not like Trump. That is not what that difference seems to amount to. It amounts to, are you a decent person or are you one of them?
Yeah.
And both sides say that.
Both sides say that.
And
yes.
we saw, there was a statistic I've actually seen before. In preparation for this, I looked up, some stuff, and remember I saw a Good Morning America segment that they had done with this couple. Really, it was a sweet couple. I really enjoyed watching that. It was this couple who have been married for 45 years, I think they said. Yeah, something
50,
like that.
Sure.
I think they said 45. And he's a conservative Republican and she is a liberal Democrat.
Right.
And it just didn't matter. They just so love each other, and the difference was, it wasn't about, they were so clear about this, it wasn't about their character. It wasn't about how could a decent person be on that side of things. It was simply about, of course decent people can be on both sides of lots of different issues. And that's the assumption that has gotten lost, especially in the Trump years, but even it was starting to be lost even before that. So when it's come up with couples I've dealt with, it has often been this sense of, if you're not horrified by fill in the blanks, and this is true from both sides.
Yeah.
You hear this from both sides. If you're not horrified by that, I don't know how I can respect you. Never mind be in a partnership with you where we try to make a life together. And that sucks, to use the technical terminology.
Yes,
I think
does.
that sucks. Yeah. So there we are, folks. Can a couple survive political differences? No, sucks.
Well, one of the things that couple said, they had both been through health crises, and they realized that the important thing was the love that they had for each other.
Yes.
So that kind of trumps all else.
So to speak, yes.
So to speak.
And can I generalize even further, if I may? Because it's not just about, a married couple or a partnered couple where this would come up. It comes up in all sorts of ways, like when there are natural disasters and things like that, and people come out of the woodwork to help each other across all of those political lines, and then come to discover, oh, you can be somebody who's on that side and still actually be a decent human being. How is that even possible? And I am simply saying, the solution here is to recognize that is totally possible, and I will be a little snarkier about it. And those of us, and I count myself in this us because we're all in it together, those of us who won't see that are the problem, not the solution. The idea of saying that anybody who supports the other side must be a bad human being on some level, or is crazy, or is stupid, any of the above. Crazy, evil, or stupid. The big trifecta, the big three, right?
The big three in
the
your
big
book.
three that I'm always at pains to mention to start off with clients saying, I'm starting with the assumption that nobody in this conversation is crazy, evil, or stupid.
Right.
And yet the assumption that must be the case is the problem. And it is a bigger problem than whatever horrible policy the other side is taking.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that the couple said also is, you don't yell at the other person when you're having a discussion.
Yes.
Right? Don't.
Yeah, she wrote a book. The woman of the couple actually wrote a book.
Yeah,
I wish I
she's
remembered
a psychologist.
her name.
Yeah.
Would be nice if I ever remembered anybody's name, but look it up, folks.
Right.
It's
So
GMA
and don't throw them newspaper articles and say, here, read this, because you're really not going to change their.
Oh my God! And I have and they pantomime that, and he was saying, here, take this, and she said, no, it's like this. He puts it right in his face. I have so seen that. I have seen that so much. If you would just read my sources, it would convince you how wrong you are, and that is simply not true.
Well, it's like saying, to your kid, you're fat and you should watch what you eat, because that's going to go over really well, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's
that's
going to
really
make them
gonna
want to lose weight.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they don't know they're fat, right?
Yeah. Increasing misery tends not to help people, sort of take hold of their lives and figure out maybe I can, maybe I do need to change some things. But yes, increasing misery tends not to do it. And it tends also to be wrong-headed. It's just unfair. It's wrong. It's not like giving somebody advice about something is always wrong.
Yeah.
But it's that underlying assumption and this is the one that motivates me. You know what I mean? That animates me in sort of in a negative way, I suppose you'd say. It's that underlying assumption that, oh, I know what's right and you couldn't possibly. And that I've got a monopoly on right. And anybody who doesn't think that, I can't possibly understand that. And that's the problem. That's not the solution. And both sides are so convinced that the other side is the one that's doing that. I was starting to say, they showed a statistic on there, which I've seen before. It was 17% of Democrats and 16% of Republicans. Only that proportion would consider marrying somebody across the political line who wasn't a Democrat or a Republican. And so huge majorities, very, very similar majorities of both Republicans and Democrats are looking at the other side as, oh my God, I couldn't go there.
Yeah.
Now, let me put in a word, what you said early on, because I think I would have the same issue, right? If I was with somebody who was dedicated to causes that I found really painfully difficult, I would have a hard time. So I think the notion, well, look, just the fact, and I've said this before at times, and I think this applied to both of us, when we were both single in our single years, minutes in my case, but years in your case, that I knew I needed a Jewish woman.
Right.
And I think you knew you needed a Jewish man.
Correct.
And that's saying nothing bad about anybody who isn't Jewish. It's simply recognizing that there is a level of similarity of value and context. Well, I love the way you used to put it. And history and practice. And you used to put it, you needed somebody who would get the jokes.
Exactly.
Right.
I don't want to explain the jokes.
Exactly. And of course that sounds funny, but it's also profound. It's, in other words, you need somebody whose language you basically speak. Not to say, I've worked with all kinds of couples who, in some cases, literally don't speak each other's language. Like one of them is, if they're talking to me, at least one speaks English, but often the other person doesn't speak that much English, and yet they find each other. It's lovely when that happens. And I've worked with lots of interfaith couples as well, But all of that said, the idea that you want to be able to share certain values makes sense. The idea that it needs to be a litmus test turns out to be toxic. Because it's, it's one thing to say, well, I don't want to marry someone that I don't feel really simpatico with. I got that. But to say that means that nobody should marry them, or that they're somehow they're just on the wrong side. That's that ideological, my shtick about ideologies as opposed to ideas. Ideologies turn whatever good ideas there were into caricatures, and often just turns them evil. And so that has been what's happening. Now, I don't want to be both sides-ish about this. I am happy. I am willing to take a stand, and lots of other people have pointed this out as well. If you're wondering which side of all this has been the most guilty of demonizing the other side, I would claim, you know what, I'm hesitating, because I've heard on the progressive left a level of demonization that is also horrendous as well.
Oh, yeah.
So that both sides, actually, both extremes do it.
Yes, they do.
At the federal level, we have never had a president who has been as awful in this way as the one we have now.
That's true.
And I'm, so folks, all right, now have we lost half of our audience right now? I hope not. I seriously hope not. I'm not speaking about policy. I'm speaking quite specifically about deliberately demonizing the other side.
Yes.
That's sick, and we shouldn't allow that, and that's the problem. But his policies, I disagree with. It's funny how much I've commented this to you as well. Again, folks can possibly tell, my sort of old political home was more the left than the right, although I've never been extreme on either side. But I certainly, and the older I've got, I think the more I've drifted rightward, which is
as tends to happen.
But the I remember how difficulty I had listening to George W. Bush when he was president. And since Trump has been president, I now think, oh my God, I just disagree with him. With Bush. It's like, oh, he's a decent human being with whom I disagreed on a number of issues. And so there is a level of toxicity that I think we need to be very aware of. But again, it's not just on the Trump side. Mm-hmm. Also, the level of condescension that you get coming from the left, and I'm not just talking about the extreme left. There's a level of anti-Semitism that comes actually now from both sides. Aren't we lucky?
Yes, we are.
We're
getting it from all directions.
We're getting that from all directions, so that's interesting too. But the level of condescension that is coming, especially from the left, that I've always said that's been a factor in why someone as disgustingly toxic as Trump is able to be, nevertheless attracts people who don't like that, but nevertheless look at the other side as worse.
That's right. They're turned off by the vitriol that's coming out of the progressive movement.
Exactly.
And the left.
So to be so turned off by that they're willing to say, I'll overlook this guy being, saying stuff that is just you would never want your child to say to anybody. I'll overlook that because the other side is so much worse. I have sympathy for that view. I can understand where it comes from. So, let's get back to our question.
Yes.
So, let me ask you again. Can a couple survive political differences? What do you think?
I think it depends on the couple.
Yeah, of course.
Like anything else.
Yes, of course it does.
If there are other factors that are keeping you and holding you together that you all agree on, then political discussions can be civil.
Well, yes, and civil, and so taking a page out of that couple that we saw in the GMA segment, that idea that they were so clear that their love and appreciation and gratitude for each other, I will use the word trumps, their political differences. Right. Their differences of belief or differences of sort of political orientation. That's really what it's about. They privileged their relationship over merely opinions. And I find that a really powerful thing. And our 7 words, be kind, don't panic, and have faith, really is a lot about that. Be kind is really about that very sense. It's where your sense of kinship overrides mere things like political differences, which aren't trivial, but aren't determinative. It's like, oh, I can respect you even if you disagree with me. Isn't that a riot? I can deeply respect you. In fact, that's where you get into the appreciation, as I'll often point out to folks, the fact that 2 people in a relationship are different is actually not a bug, it's a feature of evolution. It's like, no, that's a good thing. Species diversity turns out to be a good thing. You survive more things. The fact that couples can do better if they're not identical than if they try to be, because obviously no two people are identical.
Right, but you still want to have similar values and outlook and goals and objectives and what you want from your relationship.
Yeah. I mean, certainly things like political differences can turn into a deal breaker if they are so associated. Well, they could be. Well, you mentioned. I hope it's okay to mention. You mentioned someone. I don't know the person, but you mentioned someone who had to stop playing bridge,
right?
Because she couldn't keep hearing the word Trump. I'm thinking, okay, that's a little extreme. and so, that would be difficult for such a person probably to try and be married to someone who was a Trump supporter.
I would think so.
But that idea that you can, you can put those things in context, it certainly makes sense.
Well, within our own families, we have people that are married to people with different political views and parties.
Of course we do. And I can't imagine there are very many families where that isn't true, because you're talking about a polarization that roughly splits the country in half. It's not exact, but it's pretty close in terms of, the people who like Trump and the people who don't. He's getting relatively bad polling at the moment, but overall, it's not quite 50-50, but it's not that far from it. So, that's what you're dealing with. And what I have always said so often is it can't be that huge minorities even are all crazy.
Right.
it can't be true. That
Well,
we
as
need
you
a
know
definition.
from your affiliation with Braver Angels and
Absolutely.
Derate the Hate and
The Pro-Human Foundation.
Pro-Human,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. These are all foundations and organizations that have arisen lately because of such political divides.
Yeah, and Derate the Hate, just to say, that's Wilk Wilkinson's podcast. That's a podcast.
Okay.
But he now works for Braver Angels.
Right.
He is one of the people who is employed by Braver Angels.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and Daryl Davis and Daryl Davis is the one who was one of the co-founders of the Pro-Human Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we'll mention while we're mentioning names, Bill Doherty, who is one of the founders of Braver Angels, who is a couples therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and and I remember when I first saw that, realizing, yeah, it kind of makes sense that a couples therapist would be thinking that way. He's the one who's realizing there's got to be a way of actually having conversations that are founded on mutual respect,
Right.
as opposed to founded on litmus tests of belief.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always love giving a shout out to Braver Angels because of that.
Yeah, so if you find yourself in a couple situation where you and your partner are on different political sides and are finding it difficult to come through that divide, get in touch with Braver Angels. Watch or listen to Derate the Hate.
Yeah, any of those could work.
And Pro-Human. I mean they're very useful.
Yeah.
And certainly very important organizations to have in this time.
Now, I will note, here's one of the ironies that comes up when you think about this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. This reminds me, you can see if you think this parallel is apt or not. I remember decades ago when I was on the board of an organization that was running a conference for Jews in rural New England. Mm-hmm. The Conference on Judaism in Rural New England, it was called. And we were trying to accommodate people across the spectrum of practice.
Yeah.
And when you try to do that, you bump into the fact that you're accommodating people who are accommodating, and then you're accommodating people who are not accommodating. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
In other words, orthodox practices tend to be the ones that are the most restrictive, kind of by definition.
Right.
And so to accommodate the orthodox, you have to basically do the practices that are okay with the orthodox,
Mm-hmm.
which rules out some stuff that might be what the people on the other end of the spectrum really would want to do. It involves things like, can you use musical instruments on the Sabbath? Can you record things? Can you use, electric equipment and stuff like that?
Uh-huh.
And if you really want to accommodate the Orthodox folks who were there, you would need to do it in a way that wouldn't mean that they would feel like they need to leave if you're doing something that was being consistent with their being present. And it's a fascinating thing to work through. Well, when it comes to a couple dealing with a political difference, sometimes what happens is you get the one person who is interested in being accommodating, and yet it is sort of part and parcel of the other person's way of thinking that you can't be accommodating. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that couple that we saw was such a great example of folks who were saying, no, we are not going to ever say we can't be accommodating. Our relationship's more important than that. Mm-hmm. But if somebody's deeply held belief system is that you can't accommodate that evil, then that becomes a potential deal breaker. And it's hard. It's hard when that happens. Mm-hmm. And I feel it was bad. I first started to encounter it a lot around the 2016 election, and then even more after the 2020 election, mm-hmm. because there was this split about, do you trust the election results or not? Mm-hmm. And that I remember numbers of folks, and the pandemic. Oh my God, the pandemic was the people's differences around, to what extent do you agree with or want to follow various sorts of mandates and, all of that stuff. That was really doing a number on a lot of couples.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Perfect storm of all that bad stuff happening in 2020.
Yeah. So, I think I want to invite us to sort of conclude this with some of the stuff, and I didn't get down the exact, I'll put the link to that in the notes for this episode. I'll put the link to that GMA segment because they talked about those things that they do, like, they don't raise their voice and they don't, shove articles at each other, and I forgot what else, but they're all good ideas.
Right.
But I want to leave folks with some thoughts about what might you do if you are in this situation.
Please do.
And so, do you have ideas off the top here?
No, I'm
I'll
not a
give
therapist.
You some. That doesn't mean you don't have good ideas.
Well,
but
my ideas are not good.
Oh, that's not true.
Well, on
That's
this
so not
on
true.
this situation.
Well, well, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, because no, I think I'm more the one who's thinking there's got to be a way to accommodate, and you leave it at that. So, yeah, so one suggestion I have is to actually bring up this problem, to bring up the problem and say, wow, it's really difficult when we have such different views about this. And we're each having this tendency to feel like, oh my God, how could I respect someone who feels the other way? And yet, and this is like a leap of faith, to be able to try on the idea and say it to each other. It feels difficult, but I just have to imagine it must be that I can respect people who disagree with me on this, including you. And yet it is hard because I really, it really does feel like it's violating some important things to me, but I'll bet how I feel it feels that way to you. That willingness to offer that to someone, to offer understanding, to offer empathy. I mentioned Daryl Davis, the founder of Pro-Human Foundation.
Right.
For folks who don't know who he is, he's been profiled on various TV magazines and stuff like that. He's the man, a black man who went and ended up befriending a bunch of KKK folks. Not because he wasn't pretending that it was okay, that he thought white supremacy was correct. He obviously didn't. He just started with the idea that, well, why would someone hate me if they don't know me? What if I actually, with respect, get to know them? So he didn't go and tell them they're wrong. He went and would ask questions. Well, what is this about?
Yeah.
And here they would be trying to say how inferior black people was to this intelligent, interested black man. And many of them came to realize, maybe we ought to reconsider this. Maybe this white supremacy thing is not as accurate as I thought it was, And a whole bunch of them now, dozens and dozens of them, have sent him their robe.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's I was listening to a video this morning by I hope I can get his name right. He was an Arab guy. His name is Loya Sharif, and he said, he was raised to hate Jews, basically. I forget which country he was from. And then when he was, I think, 16 or 20, he never met Jewish people, of course, because, but that was his whole background. And then when he went to college, he started meeting Jewish people and talking to them and reading up on history, and he was like, maybe everything I was taught was not exactly right.
Yeah.
And as he got to know more Israelis and saw that they were just like normal people and they weren't out to kill him, and they were just interested in him, and he learned history, and he's taken a lot of criticism from a lot of his Arab friends and family, because they say, how could you possibly think that? And he said, well, that's why I'm going around lecturing, because we need to educate ourselves, and not just believe all this horrible stuff that we're being raised with.
Yeah.
So it's that same thing that you're talking about with Daryl Davis meeting the white people meeting a black man that's truly interested in finding out about what it is with them, and having that conversation and listening to each other.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because I didn't hear what you were talking about with the Arab man, but that doesn't mean there aren't multiple narratives around that emphasize each people's grievances and pain and difficulties and sufferings. There are. They're not all perfectly compatible, but there's reality in all of them. And to be able to recognize that's how you make peace. That's how that happens.
Yeah.
And so it's true in a couple as well. The way you can make peace is when you come to discover, well, look, this is no different in some ways, no different from when somebody feels betrayed by someone. I say feels betrayed often because, they actually cheated or something like that. To survive that, for a couple to survive that, is an exercise, among other things, in recognizing that there's nuance. There's stuff that was going on they weren't aware of. Doesn't justify bad behavior, but it's like, oh my God, I can start to see why a good person might have gone that direction. And that's not any different from saying how could good people like him or not like him or whatever it is. Yeah, it turns out lots of good people could like or not like. depends on their own background, depends on their own set of experiences.
Right.
There's lots of valid ways of getting to lots of different places. And when you start with that assumption, then you can actually hear people. And that's what gets people away from from hate, is when they actually start to understand, oh, you're just a human being like I am. We're all doing the best we can here, aren't we? Isn't that interesting? That's what I try to do with couples.
There you have it.
There you have it. So, on that note, Judy, what should people do if they would like us to be talking about something in particular, or if they'd like to be a guest on our show?
Oh, well, yes, all of those things. You can go to our newly refurbished, redone, website.
Designed.
CT,
yes.
Thank you, ctin7.com. That's CT, as in couples therapy, IN numeral 7.com.
ctin7.com, and when you get there, you will see there is a way of looking at actually hearing there all of our past episodes. There's a link there to my YouTube channel where you can watch us as well as hear us. They're all on there. All the videos we've done are on there.
Yeah.
And there's also there's a contact page, and that's where you can contact us, by golly.
Right, and you can learn all about Bruce's workshops, his books, my book too.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
All that good stuff. So do check that out. And I guess that's where we're at, right?
That's where we're at.
And so until next time,
remember, be kind.
Don't panic.
And have faith.